Welcome to the Property Pendulum, brought to you by Domain and Fear and Greed, the podcast that tells you which way the property market is going to swing and how to make the most of it. I'm Michael Thompson, and I'm joined by Alice Stolz, National Property Editor at Domain, and one of Australia's foremost experts, it must be said, on all things real estate, known to audiences right around the country for her work on Nine, including The Block. Hello, Alice.
Hello, Michael. Great to be with you.
It's a good topic today. It's very exciting because we can range from some unusual things through to some more kind of ordinary topics here. We are talking today about the trends that are emerging in homes, and that does range from quirky, really quite unusual things that you walk into a house and go, don't know what was going through their head when they put that in, but through to the things that you really need to know about if you are hoping to sell. If you're hoping to kind of attract the best price in the current market, then you kind of need to know what people are looking for, what people are wanting, and what other sellers have got in their homes as well. But can we start with the absurd stuff, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it seems like house trends sort of rise and fall as much as house prices sometimes, doesn't it? But look, over the past few years, we've sort of seen it all. We've seen teppanyaki grills. We're definitely seeing a lot of people indulging in the wellness space. We're seeing petanque lawns in houses. I've seen polo fields. We've seen underground sort of subterranean basements, cigar lounges where the air gets sort of shot up through sort of a vault in the ceiling and then pushed outside. And the lengths that people will go to add some features to the house is quite endless, shall we say.
This is extraordinary. So I can get the teppanyaki grill because like that feels like a bit of a fad, and it's not the most impossible thing to do as part of like a kitchen kind of remodel. But at like a subterranean basement, like that is a substantial overhaul to the entire plan for your property. So there's kind of two streams here, aren't there? There's the kind of architectural trends that you see in the kind of the building side of the home, and then the features that people add to the property themselves.
Yeah, and I wonder also the rise of features is also probably symptomatic of the time we're living in when it comes to also costs and that costing so much more when it comes to building to change something structurally in the house. Whereas I think with technology and people really seeing that as kind of a certain status / currency that they can trade in, people are definitely adding a lot of features to their home in a way that they may well have once done more architectural changes to their properties.
Does anyone still have a teppanyaki grill, or was that like 3 years ago?
People do absolutely still have them. And I think for me though, like that's an example of something so niche. Like really it is really just for, cooking in a teppanyaki style, isn't it?
Yes.
Whereas we do definitely see things like if you have sort of like the idea of this basement, for example, we do also say people have set up as a home cinema. We also see examples where people come in and convert that into a home gym or a wellness space. And that to me kind of shows more longevity and I guess more bang for your buck in terms of the house, but having the adaptability to it, where the teppanyaki grill kind of only has one use.
Yeah, it's not super versatile. You're not going to fire it up just to do your scrambled eggs on a Saturday morning or something, are you? And unless you're really, really good at kind of a teppanyaki, like it is like third-degree burns all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah,
Clinging things all over the place.
It's a bit like the pizza oven too. And like, yes, we could argue that yes, you can put bread in it, etc. But in reality, they really are just for pizzas. But they do take up a fair whack of bench space in your outdoor kitchen, and they're also aesthetically you can't sort of ignore them. So if you love them and use them all the time, knock yourself out, but just be mindful that other buyers may not value it as much as you do.
I want to get to in a minute the impact that has on the price, the fact that it can either limit your appeal or if you pick the right features, what it can do to actually broaden the appeal of your property. But I thought maybe let's just work through some of the different rooms of the home, because you see a lot of properties. You kind of see a lot of kind of what is going on in different parts of the country, so you know what is on trend. So if I was to say to you, what is hot right now in kitchens, what would you say?
Look, kitchens is an interesting one because I do actually think that is where money will be probably brought back to the owner selling is in the kitchen. Yep. It's probably the one area of the house I'm kind of more open-minded about people sort of pushing the envelope a bit further in. One thing I have seen this is in the past few months, this idea of the home robot. We did have a house on the market where the robot in the kitchen makes the coffee, etc. And we're definitely seeing in the US, I've seen some of those incredible, those 100 million squillion dollar houses coming out of America, this becoming more prevalent. The robot comes with that kitchen, and that way it can navigate the kitchen quite well. And it looks like you've sort of got R2D2 or something in your kitchen, or perhaps not so big, but that is the idea of the coffee machine nowadays, is that robot bartender / barista who could make you a latte in the morning and then a margarita for cocktails at night, Michael.
This is not going to age well, this next comment, but I can't imagine that ever catching on. I'm going to listen back to this in 10 years' time, and every home is going to have its own kitchen robot. And I'm like, oh, what a fool I was back in 2024.
Indeed.
But that's extraordinary. That feels like it's more at the quirky end at this point.
Absolutely. One thing we are definitely seeing more of, which is less quirky, but I still find it kind of really interesting, is this idea of these indoor smokers. We know that smoked meat has become a really important thing for a lot of people, particularly people who are sort of follow that paleo way of life with lots of meat in their diet. But the downside of smokers is that they obviously create a lot of smoke and a lot of, odor in the house. But you can get indoor ones, which somehow magically sort of extract the air and there is no odor with them. And so, a few years ago, in my world, this is quite normal, Michael, but we started seeing, steam ovens and all these sort of different combi ovens and ovens that become dishwashers at the same time and clean automatically after you've done a roast for dinner or something. All these sort of tech coming that way. And smokers is sort of part of that new wave of appliances, I guess, of what we're seeing in kitchens.
Okay, I don't want to sound super boring then and say, but in kitchens then, like in terms of the benchtop configurations and stuff, do you still have kind of breakfast bars and island benches and things, or is that just like so kind of not even part of the consideration now? People are just looking for what kind of gadgets and what tech is there.
Oh, I love your classic old school approach and question there, Michael. Look, people absolutely are still really thinking incredibly hard about the structure of the kitchen.
Yeah.
Now, the kitchen has to obviously function. You've got to have that triangle where everything is sort of connects easily to each other. But in terms of the way the kitchens are shaped, it's really interesting. We're definitely seeing a rise. So you have an island bench, and then at the end of it, a little table sort of often built into that bench. It sort of drops down.
Okay.
And it might have like banquette seating around it, a bit like you're in sort of a French bistro or something. And I kind of love this idea because what it does is sort of extends an island bench. And I like the idea that it may make having a massive dining table a bit redundant, because I'm sort of all for this idea of having, really well thought out kitchen, dining, living spaces in a way that doesn't necessarily take up a lot of space. So what this does is kind of extends the ability of what the kitchen can do. It's not just a place to cook. You can actually eat there. And because you've got this sort of lower table with this banquette style seating around it, it does actually look quite swish and a bit sort of fancy, that if you're having like a dinner party or something, it feels quite lovely to eat in that space.
And it makes the space really usable then, doesn't it? And it means that you don't then have a massive dining table that might get used kind of once every 3 weeks or something like that.
Correct.
And you can put a pool table in instead.
I think this was born out of the fact that, when we went through this big sort of renaissance with island benches, and we had one island benches that became the size of continents taking over a kitchen. They were suddenly like, can you pass the salt, Michael? That was like, well, hang on, I'll have to actually walk up over to pass that to you.
And, or you're sliding it along like a saloon bar kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. But the issue with that is also that I think it's quite informal eating at an island bench, isn't it? You're sort of often watching someone prep and then you're eating. So that's fine for many, many days of the week for many people. But if you do want to elevate it, how can you change that? And that's how we're definitely seeing that drop down sort of table attached to that bench. And again, with that sort of banquette style upholstered seating bench, it just kind of takes it to the next level.
All right. We have overindulged on kitchens. Quite proud of myself for that one. Bathrooms. What's hot?
Well, a steam shower still has not gone out of fashion. People still love that. Do you or do you not put the ice bath in the bathroom? This is a big question that many, Michael, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me like, what is Alice talking about? But these are genuine things. Like, do you create a separate wellness space / studio wing potentially, or do you kind of, again, sort of my philosophy of trying to do a bit more with less and make that space be able to work both ways. So, for example, the ice bath could be a regularish bath, but quite deep, like sort of a Japanese bath. We're seeing very deep baths. I can't imagine bathing toddlers in the bath like that, though.
Be a disaster.
So you can see the issue with people thinking, do I make this the family bathroom or does it actually have to be my wellness space? So steam showers have remained. As I said, the ice bath is a big thing. Many people would love to have the infrared sauna, which is sort of the, accessory du jour in their bathroom inside if they haven't got a wellness space. However, many people are actually putting these saunas outside because they simply can't fit the space in a bathroom.
I would love to have that problem of going, where am I going to put my infrared sauna? It's not really a consideration for me right at this moment.
I hear you, Michael, and I'm with you on that. Actually, but one thing that I'd be interested to get your thoughts on, one trend that we did see that I am just think we should see the death of is showers without doors. Now, because they're impractical,
yes,
harder to control the temperature, you're exposed to drafts, there's privacy issues, slip hazards if you want to get into OH&S issues in your own home. How do we resolve that issue? So I think that's a dreadful idea, showers without doors. However, it's become very popular, and I think we're slowly seeing a shift away from it as people are now sort of turning their back on that sort of open plan, open room living.
Yeah, it feels like that was a step backwards when doors disappeared. Like, how on earth are you supposed to splash? Like, it's just water goes everywhere. It's impractical, it's illogical, and I'm with you. Bring back doors. Bedrooms. Is there anything exciting happening in bedrooms? There's definitely a better way I could have asked that question.
I'll just become I am not going to become, I am the property editor, so I'm going to answer you in a very straight way back.
Please do.
Smart mattresses. Have you heard about these?
I have basically no idea what a smart mattress is.
They will read your sleep patterns. It's like sort of people who wear, the rings or watches to bed. The mattress will provide all the insights and data to your sleep. Adjustable beds that people like to be able to change sort of the condition of the mattress and that. Now, that obviously is something also that people can take with them. And we're also seeing with the rise of more people renting these days because of issues around being able to access houses, people are actually also getting better accessories in their houses, so that if you are a renter or you're a rent vestor potentially, that you might own an asset, but you rent where you want to live, not where you can afford to buy, you may then indulge in a great accessory for that bedroom. And often that is, as I said, like a smart bed. Definitely this idea of wellness is certainly extending to the bedroom, and, the electric blind trend still remains. And on that note, I will add, Michael, the issue with any kind of tech in that, for people thinking about it, is that be very mindful that you don't let yourself go absolutely crazy and create tech that only you can run, because many buyers who buy that house might just be like, that's too hard basket. If it comes with the house, fine, but I'm not going to pay a premium for something that I will never know how to use, or I can't be bothered to work out.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I was going to ask you separately about the smart home technology and just having everything all connected and all of this, and whether that is actually a draw card for people or whether it does present a little bit of a barrier to kind of understanding how a home works. If you see a light switch on the wall, you understand how that works. But if you suddenly don't see any light switches, you don't see anything, and you're like, I actually don't know how this house functions, it would feel like it could be a bit kind of tough to get into.
Yeah, it's a bit like when you stay at a hotel and you kind of like, I can't actually find the nightlight to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or something, and it just leaves you with this sense of, I don't feel at home here or comfortable here.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, for me, it comes back to tech and features that are done really well in the kitchen can add value, but be aware that only really is if the buyer values it. I think tech in other areas of the house is becoming a bit more tenuous as to will you get that money back in the long run.
What about structural trends? Kind of what are people doing? And probably more importantly, what should we be steering clear of?
Well, I'm happy to report that the idea of floating staircases is now on the decline. Now, they're those staircases that are incredibly dangerous, that makes any person with young children sort of cringe in horror at the thought of how their child's going to go up there. And they take up a massive space in living room. There's noise issues. They're not practical. So they are on the way out. Those big sort of curved staircases, which you all would have seen a lot of, remain very popular still. Barn doors, that idea of sort of peak Pinterest that adds rustic charm, is also on the way out, because they're not very good at dampening noise, I guess. So people traditionally are going back to that more swing door. And TVs above fireplaces. Forget it. The TV needs to be at eye level or sort of concealed behind a sort of a panel or something. But, for a while there, we'd walk into a room and there would always be a TV above a fireplace. It was always too high. And it meant you probably couldn't watch TV very well because of the sort of, glare and the height of it. So that is now on the way out as well.
Okay. We are running out of time, but I need to ask you about outdoors and the backyard. And I know I'm going to sound like I'm living in the 80s still, but does everybody still want a pool in the backyard?
Yeah, pool is one of our most searched words on Domain. It's quite extraordinary.
I'm just glad to know that I'm still on trend with wanting to have a pool.
So
far, I'm feeling completely out of touch with everything else that you have said so far. Like the pool, yes, I'm back, baby.
The pool remains. And I won't drag you down the rabbit hole of, but what sort of pool? Because then you've got fiberglass, concrete, plunge pool. Do you know what I mean? What shape, what feel, what sort of water? Mineral pool without chlorine in it. That sort of,
the swim spas as well, that you're kind of pushing against it. And I'm like, oh my God, it feels like it's too hard. Whatever happened to the good old-fashioned kidney-shaped kind of pool in the backyard? Oh, and suddenly I just became uncool again, didn't I? I can see by the way that you were shaking your head at me.
I think it stayed in 1979, Michael, and that's probably where it belongs. One other thing, though, outside, though, is this idea of exterior spotlights. Now, we've definitely seen a lot of trends around lighting that people really enjoy lighting up spaces. Now, I would caution people that we don't need to light up a house like the Sydney Opera House or the Roman Forum. Hold back, be sustainable, because it just looks absurd. And I think of the energy costs. So I think understated, practical is the way to go. Light up features of a beautiful garden or a lovely, if you've got a big old oak tree, like that, lighting up, that is quite beautiful. And that to me is actually quite artful. But forget going all out and kind of acting like it's Christmas Eve in whatever street is in your capital city of, we all know the street in our city that does that around Christmas time.
We need to talk about money now, because really we've put together quite a comprehensive list of features, and some of them are quite strange. Some of them feel quite niche, really. Are people actually buying in the current market? Are people actually buying properties with some of these stranger features in them, or are they a turn off? Like the robot kind of in the kitchen, for instance, or your indoor smoker or something like. Are they too niche to actually attract people, or are they still selling?
It all comes down to the price that the agent and the buyer is expecting someone to pay for it. I definitely think in kitchens, we do see when you've got a full, almost commercial style gourmet kitchen, it definitely can work in the favour of the buyer. But again, you have to ensure the rest of the house reflects that. So I think there's no point in having an incredible kitchen and the rest of the house doesn't quite have, electricity, for example. So you've got to have sort of the continuity running throughout the whole house. I do think also you just don't want to go overboard. So I think, a sauna in a bathroom, not everybody's going to value that. A smart toilet, for example, that's probably a bit less absurd. And I know you're probably thinking, Alice, you've now jumped the shark. But
the one thing I'm not going to do is ask you to explain the concept of a smart toilet. I think that's probably we can imagine. Please just keep going.
But so I just think if you're doing something that is practical and used every day all the time, great. But it's that idea of a sauna. If you don't want to do a sauna, you're not going to use it. The loo, people are using that every day.
Okay, so really, there are certain things then, if you focus on the gourmet kitchen and these kind of, they might be big ticket items because they'd be quite expensive to actually do if you're doing as a renovation, but they are things that are likely to deliver you more of a return than say something that is super, super niche. The flip side of that is if you are the buyer and the property has something that is really quite niche and you don't need it, you don't want it, can you use that in your negotiations? Kind of, because if you can see that it's turning other people off as well, then can you go, look, you know what, I love the place, but this is a turn off. Can you use that to your advantage?
I'm so impressed, Michael, that you're taking lessons from our negotiating episode we did a while ago about negotiating, sort of horse trading with between the buyer and seller. Because absolutely, you could say, you know what, I don't want a jacuzzi. I don't want a teppanyaki grill. Remove it. I don't care how it's done. I just want it to look like it was never there. Obviously, the vendor has to pay for it, and we've got ourselves a deal. So absolutely, and I think it's a particularly good thing to leverage if you are the only sort of particularly strongly interested buyer, and that person is also keen to sell. So it may mean that you pay that slightly higher price for it, but at least you don't have to get rid of that absurd white elephant yourself.
So if we bring it all home, for a seller, it is about kind of striking a balance between being on trend, right, and still keeping your property, the bland isn't the right word, but broad enough to attract a number of potential buyers who are all keen to see themselves in that place.
Yeah, I think the goal should be to find a balance in your own style and that is on trend or sort of contemporary that will also stand the test of time, because you want to have that classic element to your house without it suddenly appearing dated.
Awesome. Good fun. Thank you very much, Alice.
Thank you, Michael.
That was real estate expert Alice Stolz, national property editor at Domain, and I'm Michael Thompson. Make sure you're following the podcast, and we'll be back next week with another episode of The Property Pendulum, brought to you by Domain and Fear and Greed, the podcast that tells you which way the property market is going to swing and how to make the most of it.